Hi, everyone. We discovered last week our favorite game, and this week we're going to do our favorite childhood story. And to remember, what I want you to get out of the childhood game is to remember the feeling you had playing that game, because that is your goal, that is your desired zone. Now, when I say that, I'm saying it is our desired zone, but also to have it all the time is unrealistic. So instead, because when you're in that zone, both your child self and your adult self are integrated. But our minds are always going to be racing. We're adults. Our body is going to react. So what we're really trying to do is become aware of when that feeling arises, and and you have to be, it's very subtle. It's like a little puff of air. Just become aware of that puff of air, because that puff, it's a pause, almost like a short breath, an exhale that will allow you to shift from the childhood coping mechanism into an adult wisdom. And when that happens, you have become integrated with that child. Not just that feeling, but you have become aware that the child's letting go and you're trying an adult mechanism or wisdom, something that's wiser. You're responding rather than the childhood reaction. But I would love to say we know all the lessons of integration, but we're going to do the last step of how to find that child, or what I call the first step of integration, or the last step of finding how to integrate. And that is discovering your favorite childhood story. Because it is with that childhood story, that is the story your child has wanted to tell. And I'm going to show you an example by sharing my screen. My favorite childhood story, I didn't realize what it was, but was Peter Pan and Wendy. When I thought of that, I'll make sure I'm sharing it. Did I share that screen? Yeah, let me make sure. Here's the book. It's the 1952 version of Peter Pan and Wendy. And the way I remembered this version is remembering the first time I saw this book. And I was probably 2.5. I was in the house I'm in now, but it was owned by my paternal grandparents. And there is a closet in the kitchen that now has a toilet in it, which was put in for my Grammy, who read me this book when she got sick with cancer. I didn't know she was having cancer, but before she did, she would read me this book while I had my little potty in the closet. And this was my favorite book. I would ask her to read it to me time and time again, and she'd leave that book on the counter. So when I came, she would read it to me. And so I went out and I bought this book. Well, I did research. I figured, well, I was born in 54. That would have been like 56, 57 when she was reading it to me. And she even gave me the book, and that's another story. But anyway, I thought, well, it's got to be the 50s. And I remember it being golden books. She always had golden books like Jack and the Beanstalk and all those things. She'd buy them with green stamps. I remember that. My grandfather was the town barber in a little town they live in. And I can remember these pictures when I opened it up. Yeah, I can remember her showing me that. Anyway, she would read it to me. And I went on the internet and looked for a 1952 version or 1950s version, Golden Book version of Peter Pan and Wendy. I found it, I ordered it, bought it, and read it. As I read it, I found out the method of what I'm showing you of how to integrate the child through this story by relaying this story, finding the characters from my childhood in this plot. And that was the story my child had been wanting to share all these years, so that both of us could not leave the past, but integrate our past so our present, my present, could shift. So for this week, I'll show you next week how to actually figure all this out as far as outlining and who the characters are and everything. I want you to figure out what your favorite childhood book was. And again, mine was Peter Pan and Wendy. It certainly wasn't Barry's adult version of Peter Pan. That would have been way over the top. It's just this thin little book that she would read me while I was on the potty, because they were trying to teach me to be potty trained. That she would read me, and time and time and time again, because I loved it. And anyway, find, let's say it's a Grimm fairy tale, or it could be even an adult version of, or, the book Heidi. Well, you probably, as a little child, wasn't reading the whole thick book of Heidi. Someone was probably reading it to you. And my Grammy read this to me, who was like my Quan at the time, my stability until she died 2 years later, which was just, I'm not going to say earth-shattering. It's my first experience with death as a child, just left me numb and empty, I would say, be more the feel. But I think that's why it was probably part of my favorite book, because she read it to me, but also that made sense. My adult sense made that, but as my child, and I wrote out her story through this favorite childhood story, I realized, yes, maybe she was the gatekeeper of it, but actually my childhood was this story. So at any rate, this week, your assignment is to remember your first book, buy that childhood version of that book. And as I said, this was a 1952 version. It cost me, I think on Discovery Books, wherever I found it, $1.50, and had him ship it to me, and then read it. And if you want it, and I'd like you to do that, and then we'll get together and discuss it. Thank you, and have a wonderful day.